Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, founder of Alzheimer Speaks, which is a advocacy-based group based in Minnesota that is here to help shift our dementia care culture around the world. And we do that by providing a variety of platforms. The radio show is one. We do something called Dementia Chats, which is a free webinar we do twice a month, where you can interact with people that have dementia. They actually are our experts. And sometimes it's nice to be able to ask somebody besides a family member or one of your clients, what is it like and how can I do it differently? Because they're just a little bit more open to talking about it. There might not be the dynamic. So I encourage you to join us for Dementia Chats, which is Tuesdays between 3 and 4 o'clock Eastern Time on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And so sometimes the second and fourth Tuesdays get pretty busy because we do our radio shows at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Each Tuesday. But those are really quite fascinating, and people are using those webinar sessions for family discussions, just to learn more. Students are using them in thesis papers. Doctors are watching them. Support groups are utilizing them. And communities are using them for training programs as well. So, again, very simple concept. We're pretty low-key. We love to get a conversation going between individuals. And so come prepared, with any questions that you would have. The other thing I want to tell you, I guess, about myself and Alzheimer's Speaks is I've been on this journey with my own mom for 30 years, and I just feel it's really important that we work together. And that's one of the reasons I started the blog and started the resource directory in our website and got into everything that I'm doing, because I think it's about raising everybody's voice. I don't think that there's one set tool out there that's going to help us. I think it really is about joining forces together and working together as one. And I know that we are making a difference working together the way we are through Alzheimer Speaks, because we were recognized as the #1 influencer online by ShareCare and Dr. Oz. And that wouldn't have happened without your likes, without your help. So again, I want to thank you each so much for participating in making our reach longer and bigger and broader. Today's show I'm really excited about because we have a journalist and author with us here today who is going to be sharing some amazing information that she has gathered over a 2-year journey by sitting in on weekly meetings of local hospitals, caregiver support groups, and it's quite a fascinating book with wonderful stories in it. And so here in just a minute, I'm going to go ahead and introduce formally Nell Lake, the author and journalist who has written this wonderful, wonderful book. But before I do so, I do want to just do a shout out to some of my favorite organizations that I think a lot of people don't know about, and I think it's really important for us to raise their awareness. The first is Alzheimer's Disease International. That is an organization of all the associations all around the world. So no matter where you're located, this is a way to be able to find what association is closest to you. And they have the World Reports. It's a great resource site. So if you just Google Alzheimer's Disease International, you'll find them. The Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation is also a fantastic organization that has been around for over 20 years, and they really take a holistic approach in terms of living with the disease, from food and diet and exercise and meditation. And they also offer a lot of educational resources. So look up the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, and you can find them by just going to alzheimersprevention.org. And then many times people have certain types of dementia. It might be Lewy body, it might be frontal temporal lobe, they might be dealing with aphasia, and there are actual organizations out there to support each of those. So look them up, use them as resources. There are also people always looking for study groups, clinical trials, trying to push research forward. And if you go to Facebook and look up Alzheimer's Studies, you're going to find a group there that has actually a third trial, which is pretty far into the process on tau, and they are taking applicants right now. So go to alzheimersstudies.com or the Alzheimer's team on Facebook. And then a couple of recreational things, because I think it's important on how do we engage. Music First has music prescriptions, which can actually change our moods. Puzzle With Me is a great organization that has designed puzzles that are adult-friendly, and great for people with cognitive problems. Jiminy Wicket is an intergenerational croquet game. And then, of course, I'd be amiss if I didn't mention the Purple Angel Project. The Purple Angel Project is started by Norms McNamara, and it really is about joining forces together to make the world a better place and to be able to go ahead and raise awareness in a very simple fashion. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first guest, Nell Lake. And Nell is the author of Caregivers, a support group's stories of slow loss, courage, and love. And like I said, she has put her heart and soul into this book. 2 years of weekly meetings is a lot. And from that, she was able to pull out so much great information by witnessing acts of devotion and frustration, seeing the lessons in patience and letting go. And, I think it's so interesting, and I know we'll hear from her on how people share such intimate details in their life. Her book was released February 11th, so this is just hot off the shelf, by Scribner. And again, Nell is a freelance writer and journalist, and she was the founding editor of the Nieman Narrative Digest, which is a project of the Nieman Foundation at Harvard. She has also reported for public radio, and she lives with her family in Massachusetts. Welcome, Nell. How are you today?
I'm fine, Laurie. It's great to be with you.
Well, I'm thrilled
How are
that
you?
You're able to. Oh, I'm doing good. The sun's out, and we're going to hit 40 here in Minnesota, so no below zeros, and but now it'll be a slushy mess.
Yeah, exactly.
So right now it looks beautiful in white because we just got dumped on again, but we'll be going to ice dams and leaky roofs in a flash,
Right.
I'm sure.
It's always something.
Yep. But tis Minnesota, and it's winter no matter where you live, it sounds like, this year, according to the weather reports there. So, anyways, I wanted to have you talk to people a little bit more detail about your book and how did it come about? What gave you the idea to research this book?
Mhm. Well, I think a lot of books about caregiving have come from people who've been going through it themselves, and that was actually not the case for me. I was working as a freelance journalist and was definitely interested in issues of healthcare and health and mental health, and particularly interested in anything that drew me deeply into a story, into sort of the human experience. And I was at a dinner party for a friend and happened to sit next to a man who I had met before but didn't really know, who told me that he was a counselor on the behavioral health unit of our local hospital, and that he also facilitated a support group for caregivers. And we were talking, and he learned about my interests, and he said, you might be interested in sitting in on this group. And so I said I was interested, just in seeing what it was like. And he went and got, of course, the group's permission, the different members. It was fairly small at that point. And so in the beginning of 2010, I started sitting in on the group. And at first I thought maybe this would be a good magazine piece. But the more I got engrossed in their stories, the more I thought this could really be a book. And I got, encouragement to go ahead and do that. And 4 years later, it just got released. So I can tell you more about that. But maybe there's particular things you want to know.
Well, it is
about the group.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, this is a 4-year journey for you.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time and commitment. Does it feel almost like your baby? I mean, have you written other books? Maybe I should ask you that too.
No, this is my first book. Before that had just been magazine pieces, and as you said earlier than that, some radio work. Absolutely my baby, yeah. It's quite a process. So it was 2 years of what we call reporting, sitting in on the group. And I didn't just sit in on the group. I went out with the caregivers into their lives and met the people, spent time also with the people they were caring for. And I tried to do a good bit of research as well so that I could provide some useful kind of background information for people as I told the stories of the caregivers.
Okay. What did you learn, from the caregivers that you followed and observed?
I learned so much personally from them. I learned, first of all, about a kind of endurance that I think probably your listeners might be able to relate to, and certainly you must be able to relate to. And what I came to see as I came to see heroism as different from just our usual conventional notion of heroism of firefighters, say, or police officers. I think obviously we admire people, we call them heroes when they're courageous, and I thought there is a great deal of courage in caregiving because you're going back and back and back again to a situation that's perhaps challenging, but you're doing it out of compassion, and that was a real lesson for me. And I learned about simply the importance of kindness, that ultimately if we can be open to all kinds of different experiences and sort of soften to them, we can find kindness, and that makes situations easier. And I also, just for myself, I tell the story in the very beginning of the book about my grandmother, who at this point my parents are still quite healthy and sharp, and I'm not in a caregiving situation myself. So the story that really resonated for me as I did this reporting was the story of my grandmother, who she was this very vital, energetic person who talked for much of the time that I knew her about a kind of fear of illness, a fear of ending up frail, a fear of decline and ending up in a nursing home. And when she was 78, she found out that she might have cancer, and from a doctor who said she needed more tests. And rather than schedule the tests that very night, she went to her garage and sat in her car and turned it on and committed suicide. And so that was this very stark example of wanting to really avoid this whole stage of life that so many of us are going through now, with people living longer. And it was, for her, it wasn't that she was avoiding dementia, but it was, as I got to know the experience of the caregivers, I realized that they were sort of immersed in this part of life that she had avoided, and that made it very resonant for me. So I came to understand her kind of outlook as such a strong aversion and fear to this part of life, and spending time. So when you say, what did I learn? I gained so much more openness and kind of comfort with this stage of life, and learned about that from the people who were so bravely making their way through it.
Wow, that is really some personal example of the fear. And you know, A, I'm sorry for your loss, and B, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think it's really important for people to understand how difficult it is to age and or become ill, because we're so afraid of how we're going to be cared for, and are we going to be a burden, and what is life going to be like. And that just shows how deeply, you know, your grandma felt. She just didn't want to go there. It wasn't
That's
worth
right.
risking finding out. And, that's, I guess, one of the things that I see and I hear, with the journey of dementia. A lot of people, and we've actually had a radio show on, kind of end-of-life issues. And, there's a lot of chatter out there about people taking their own lives or planning for it because of the unknown and the repercussions in terms of doing that, and how do you do that, and should you do that, and the list is like endless.
That's right.
And I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong, but I think it's so critically important for us to acknowledge the fear. And I think education is a wonderful way to break through that, and to be able to have the conversation. And I think your book, really will help people have a conversation, because it's very touching, the stories and the takeaways. And, one thing that I've learned through my journey is that my journey isn't so different from everybody else's once you start having the conversation. And by allowing, again, that conversation to take place, or if it's someone reading a book who's home alone, who's feeling very alone, all of a sudden, it doesn't seem so bad because somebody else has walked that path. And there are others. It's about, connecting the dots that I think really can make the journey easier for everyone. What changed in terms of your outlook? You had mentioned, you were able to see the need and the resonance of patience and kindness. How did those two things change you in your life, or maybe they didn't, in terms of observing that?
Oh, I think they definitely changed me. I think I've become more patient, and I hope more kind as a result.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not to say endlessly, but but I think, you know, it's almost like I think for many caregivers, it's kind of a practice in finding that patience and that kindness, and just by witnessing that, it wore off on me a little bit, for sure. And I think I'll, you know, when it comes time for me to be a caregiver, I'll be, I hope, at least have that reference point, more able to find those qualities for myself, which is not at all to trivialize just how challenging it is. Now I'll be able to, you know, do it just fine. I think obviously that comes from actually doing it, but I certainly learned a lot from the people I followed. So maybe I should talk a little bit about the people I did follow.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah, so it was quite a number of people. When I first joined the group, there were about 6 regulars, and many of them, I should say, a bit older than your typical caregiver, many of them caring for spouses. And I think one reason for that was that they tended to be retired and they had more time to attend a support group. People who are younger and perhaps working or who have children, it might not be quite as easy for them to get to a support group. But the woman who became the book's sort of, quote, main character, her name is Penny, although I did change the names of people in the book. And she was caring for her mom, who had vascular dementia, which is a form that comes from tiny little recurrent tiny strokes in the brain. So she had pretty severe memory loss, but still was quite charming through the book, and she and Penny have this wonderful kind of almost funny relationship, provide some humor in many scenes in the book. And then I also follow and write quite a bit about a man I call Daniel, who turns 90 in the book, and he is caring for his quite a bit younger wife who's 65, and she was bipolar. She had a mental illness. So not everyone was caring for someone with dementia. But I would say quite a few of the challenges were similar for him. And he was taking her to doctor's appointments, and she had quite a bit of pain. And meanwhile, he was coping with his own non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that had been being treated for about a decade. So he was still dealing with his own kind of frailty and decline, but his wife was very dependent on him. And others, a woman, Sarah, caring for her husband with Alzheimer's. And I followed them through their ups and downs, and more people joined the support group. By the end of that year that forms the bulk of the book, 2010, it had doubled in size and really become this very dynamic and incredibly supportive resource for these people. And so more people come on at the end of the book. And there are different ways that people's stories resolve. A couple of care recipients pass away. Some people, for Penny, the main character, her big operating question is how long is she going to be able to have her mother in her home? And that's really a sort of a stressful question for her. At one point, she wonders if she's going to figure that out only after it's too late, safety becomes an issue or something like that. So that question for her gets resolved by the end of the book. So it's these interwoven stories coming together in the support group together each week and then kind of going out into the world again. It's the basic structure of the book.
Now, did you, one of the things that I see, like with our Memory CAF support group, is that the conversations are so intimate, and the information that people share is so deep, yet it's pretty natural. Did you witness that in the group that you observed?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's probably true that there's a difference between a group that, although it probably depends mostly just on how the group is organized, but because this group met every week, there was this continuity to the stories and a sense of being known that perhaps with a group that doesn't meet as often doesn't happen quite as fluidly. But so people were coming every week and continuing giving updates in their stories, and these stories which people, the regular members, were familiar with. So that created a real intimacy, and partly because there was no need usually to start from the beginning and describe your situation. Although when new people came in, people would do that. They'd describe their situation and then they'd give updates. And enormous intimacy. I actually read a study when I was doing research about what makes a successful support group, and this particular study gave two qualities, and one is that kind of openness and trust, a sense of safety, that you can say what is on your mind because other people understand and because people aren't judging. And I think the understanding is probably the most important thing. It's like you're there with a group of people who really get where you're coming from, which for so many caregivers is not the case out in the larger world. So you can say what you need to say. So that's one quality, is that kind of intimacy and trust. And then the other, though, is a sense of respect and boundaries, so that you're just, quote, speaking your truth, and people aren't going to necessarily give you advice if you aren't asking for it, tell you what to do, just sort of letting you have your experience, that sort of listening, which is respectful and has kind of, boundaries on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you find in the groups that you participate in.
I think very similar. I think it's one of the things that I also find is that people aren't always looking for answers, but they are looking to be heard and validated. That what they're going through, just like we do with friends. Sometimes we just have to vent, and I think sometimes facilitators of groups think that their role is to fix everything and to answer everything. And I think it's nice for a group to blend and intertwine and just support one another, because we can't always fix things. But we can let somebody know that they're valued and they're heard. And I think that's massive. I think that's really a very important factor for people to be able to just kind of breathe. Again, it gets rid of that I feel alone syndrome that is so strong, or that nobody understands. And, a lot of times too, people say, well, just talk to family. Well, right. A lot of our families don't get it either.
Or would rather not really look at it. Yeah.
And I don't know if you found in the group, because I find that family can come up quite often in our groups, in terms of, and I was right there. How do I fix my brothers? Why don't they get this? And I was on a mission to correct their life, and make them see out of my lens. And it was, I look back at it. I mean, I can laugh at it now, but I used to be really angry about it and upset and thinking, it's their life and it's their lens, Lori. And they have to live it their way. And so stop thinking that you can fix it, control it. And let them be who they are.
That's right.
That's what's going to happen. And once you get to that place, then I think the whole process of caring for someone gets easier, because you're not focused on fixing the whole world now, to support this one person, and you're allowing the natural process to take place. And it's not an easy space to get into sometimes, and some days it's easier than others, and other times, you just kind of want to wring somebody's neck and stuff. So, but I think that's a big piece of just us understanding and respecting each other and where we are in life and what our journey is. And definitely family dynamics came up a lot in the support group, particularly with siblings. One woman, I loved this line. She said, "My sisters always managed to be unhelpful in surprising new ways." And she, so for her, it was just like you say, it was sort of a matter of trying to sort of assess the situation in a fairly detached way, and then figure out what she needed to do for herself. It might be make specific requests for help, or if that help is going to be unhelpful in surprising new ways, learn how to set boundaries, but always kind of, as you say, with a little bit of letting go of trying to fix anyone, change anyone. And I also wanted to say, in terms of advice and finding solutions, absolutely, the facilitator was not someone who, he in fact was not an expert in either caregiving or dementia or anything. He was an expert in mental health counseling, but he wasn't there as a resource for how to be a better dementia caregiver. He was there really to simply facilitate this group. And I found it really interesting the way that solutions would come through a kind of evolution. People would talk about a particular problem, and there'd be discussion and maybe some suggestions, and that problem might go on for quite a while, and either the problem itself would evolve and they simply had received some support around it, or the solution emerged through the process of talking about it and perhaps seeing other people go through similar things. There was a lot of learning that happened from just, witnessing other people's experiences, which I thought was pretty great. Well, and I like that, the facilitator wasn't an expert. That's one question I get all the time with the memory cafes is, do we need a nurse? Do we need a doctor? Do we need a social worker? And I'm like, you need a person who likes people, who can be fair, who likes to, have fun, and who is not afraid to say, I don't know, but, let's figure this out as a group, and not take it on as personal responsibility, but to really allow the group to give input, because man, there's so much knowledge in that group. When you allow people, when you empower them to give it away, and a lot of times they don't even know the information and the knowledge they have until they come together, and then it's like, whoa, I guess I have learned a few lessons along the way, and I might not know as much as Joe, but man, I'm way ahead of Betty. She's just starting this process, and I can help her, and for them to be able to feel that and see that and go, okay, I can make this better for the next person. Maybe I can help them where I struggled. To me, that was just such a and it still is to this day, it's just such a precious thing to witness, that sharing, because it's so authentic and it's so basic, but it's so pure at the same time. And we don't see a lot of that in society, where there's that pure, authentic caring for one another. And by creating these safe environments for people, they can really blossom. And I think it can be life-changing for everyone involved. I hear that a lot through the groups that I facilitate. In fact, I'll give you an example of one where I was speaking at an event, and somebody came up to me afterwards and shook my hand and said, "I just want to thank you for everything you've done." And I said, "Oh, tonight I was a talk back after a play," and she said, "No, not for this." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, for what? What did I do?" And she said, "Your memory cafe." She said, "My parents attend." And she says it's not only been life-changing for them, but our whole entire family, to see how much they love gathering with new friends. It's changed the whole dynamics of our family. And we all feel safer, and we all feel supportive through this group that just my parents attend, because they share information with us. And it's changed how our whole family deals with this disease. And I was just like, holy cow. Because there's so much you don't see behind this. But again, it's getting people comfortable having the conversation so that they do go outside the safe walls of a support group and start sharing with others. And, sometimes it's not easy to share stuff with family and friends. Sometimes it's easier to do with strangers because you don't have the dynamic. So you never know, with this stuff where it's going to go. Now, I found your title interesting too, Nell. You use the words, let's see, a support group, stories of slow loss, courage, and love for your subtitle. Where did that come from?
Well, as I was working with the publisher on coming up with a title, I was basically trying to distill the book into a few themes to be able to tell a potential reader what this book would be about. And those came to me pretty easily: slow loss, courage, and love. Slow loss, of course, probably be a familiar concept to many of your listeners, in the sense of this long, slow decline that comes with dementia, and actually with many other of the diseases that the elderly get now. People used to die much more quickly, and now with the medical advances that we've seen, people are living much longer, but unfortunately, in many cases, not necessarily completely healthily until the end. So there's this long, slow decline, and it's particularly acute with dementia because of the complete reordering of the relationship that the care recipient and the caregiver have. If it was a parent-child relationship, it changes enormously. If it was a spousal relationship, it also changes enormously. And those dynamics, the change of dynamic represents a loss, and it's a slow loss, and that can be incredibly stressful. And I found in thinking about this a book by a psychologist named Pauline Boss to be particularly useful. She coined a term called ambiguous loss, where there's a person is still around and yet sort of not, or just differently around, and the particular stress of having to adjust to that and sort of live with that ambiguity. So, and I certainly heard from caregivers in the group who were quite angry that they had to be coping with this slow loss as opposed to sudden loss. One of the caregivers, Sarah, she caring for her husband with Alzheimer's, she said she found herself feeling jealous of a friend who came home to find that her husband had died of a stroke. So, it was just definitely a theme in the group, and it is a theme in the book. And then courage, as I talked about a little bit earlier, just the notion of coming back to difficult circumstances and continually finding that kindness, that compassion. I think that takes courage and making it through the difficult days. And I also just like the notion that courage is not so much not being afraid as it is acting in spite of fear. So I like that in relation to caregiving also. And love seems pretty obvious. You know, many of these relationships are relationships of love, and you are caring out of love. But I also was interested in, I felt that I learned to see different forms of love too, as happens when you're caring, say, for someone who either you've had a difficult relationship with, you don't even necessarily have loving feelings towards that person. And there was one person I followed for whom that was true. She was caring for, her husband had Alzheimer's, and he had been verbally abusive toward her in their marriage, and she was still kind of doing right by him, doing what he needed. He did end up in a nursing home, so he wasn't living with her. But to me, even though she did not have loving feelings towards him, she was acting out of kind of a larger love to meet his needs. So I also had kind of an expanded sense of what love means.
Yeah, I definitely, my outlook on unconditional love definitely expanded too through this journey. And I want to also kind of plug Pauline Voss's book, Ambiguous Love. She's a Minnesota gal. And that book actually got started through the journey of 9/11 and her dealing with people trying to deal with how do you say goodbye when no one's there, when there's not a body.
Yeah.
And we don't know if they're dead or alive. And, how it, fits, needless to say, with aging and illness, and specifically Alzheimer's, is the multiple losses that people are constantly going through. Because, it's not just one. Some people refer to it as a slow death, and I don't like using that terminology, because we are all changing in our life. And sometimes, there's some great gifts wrapped in disease, like you had mentioned, the patience and the kindness, and those are gifts that we don't have to just use in that role, but they can apply through our whole life. And I'd like to think for myself, I've learned how to at least start applying those throughout my life. It's really reframed my life. And it can do that, I think, for anybody. If you've got kids or friends or coworkers, you can just start, framing things different. And that's, your book, The Caregivers, a support group story of slow loss, courage, and love, just does a beautiful job at sharing stories and showing people the importance, I think, of sharing with others who are like-minded in similar situations, and the beauty within all of that is pretty darn profound. So I know that you're on a time frame here, and we want to be able to respect that, because you're off to another interview here shortly. Can you tell us how do people get your book, and what's the best way for them to track you down?
I have a website, NellLake.com. It's NELLLAKE. And I do have a page of resources there that could be helpful to caregivers, and there are also buttons to Amazon, independent bookstores, and Goodreads, and Amazon is a great way to find the book, or you can check with your independent bookstore, ask them to get it, or perhaps they already do have it.
Wonderful.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful book, and it's the way you formulated it, it's an easy read, and it's an interesting read, and I love that it's also coming from someone who isn't in the thick of it. There's so many of us that are telling our stories, which I think is fabulous too. But I think it's nice to have somebody from the outside looking in, because everybody's view is a little bit different in terms of how they look at things and how they perceive things. So again, I really thank you so much for being with us today, and all you're doing to change the world and how our care culture, how we give care to ourselves and to others.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you, Lori, and thanks for the work that you do.
Okay. Well, you have a great day, and you get off and run into that next interview now, and go sell up.
Thanks again.
Go sell a pile of books, okay?
Yeah.
Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Nell Lake, what a wonderful woman, and what a dedication to pull together and stick with a 2-year project of sitting in on weekly meetings of caregiver support. Again, I think that this is a great book with lots of wonderful stories. And will make you not feel alone. Again, it's just, no matter who we're caring for or what journey, there are so many things that overlap, and sometimes we forget about those things. If anybody wants to call in and ask any questions at all, feel free. We're going to kind of do an open mic thing for a little while here, and that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. Or you can always use the chat box and go ahead and write in a question or make a comment, and I'll be reviewing those. In the meantime here, I'm just going to give some updates, and we'll see if our audience is quiet today or if they want to have a conversation, because we'll go any which way. Again, I want to remind people, of Alzheimer Speaks, our resource website, which is just alzheimerspeaks.com. There you will be able to get to any of our platforms. So the radio show, the blog, the dementia chats. On the home page, we usually have announcements there. And one factor, we also have a resource directory, and a lot of people don't know about this, but I built the resource directory to be a collaborative resource. And so if you have a business, product, service, or tool that you would like to share that has that you feel is good quality for those dealing with dementia and or caregiving, you can go up to the partnering options. Click on that. You have to register to be a member of the site, and then you can go ahead and put your information into the resource directory. And if you're an individual, maybe you've read a book or seen a video or know of a service, you can also put that information in. We just ask that the URL that you put in goes directly to the information that you're talking about, because people just don't have enough time to do a search and destroy on the internet. So the whole goal of the site is to be user-friendly on that. Also, if you did not hear our last show, it was on dementia and the NFL players. I had Jerry Sandusky on, who is a play-by-play voice for the Baltimore Ravens, and his dad was a coach and ended up having Alzheimer's disease, and he has just written a beautiful book called Forgotten Sundays. He's really quite a very, very good storyteller, and talks about his experience growing up and how it affected his whole family. And we talked about thoughts about the NFL, the lawsuit, where things need to go, and I just found it to be fascinating. I know there's a lot of people out there thinking that the NFL is not doing enough, but they're putting more money up than our country is for this disease, and that needs to be recognized. They're the first ones out there. This is all new territory, and so I say kudos, and I'm excited to see where the NFL goes with this. I think they're a huge influence and have an opportunity to make a massive difference in terms of how we deal with dementia, how we look at dementia. So that's my 2 cents on that. Next week we're going to do probably a mix of open mic, and I'm hoping, we're still trying to get this scheduled, to have Laura Struble on with the Michigan School of Nursing. They're doing some neat things there, and so we're hoping to be able to get her on. Our last Dementia Chats was on the 11th, and that is posted on the website. If you go to the About page and go to the Dementia Chats tab, and for that we had a great conversation. We didn't really have any formal agenda, but we really had a wonderful conversation about being diagnosed, stages, medical professionals, perceptions of the disease, and the power of purpose. And I just want to thank everyone who participated in that, because it was really a pretty lively conversation, and I think there was good information that was given. Our next webinar, which again, all of these are free, will be February 25th. And that will be starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 Mountain, and noon Pacific Time. And we do those on the second and fourth Monday of each month. And again, you can access those through the website. Just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and go to our About page, and then to the Dementia Chats. And there's a link to enter. There's no password or anything that you need. Just enter as a guest and kind of go from there. We also have several different blog posts that I want to mention, and there was one called The Legacy of Two Mothers, and this was a story that one of our news channels here did about Judy Berry with Lakeview Ranch, who has just done phenomenal work in kind of a small group home setting in a rural area. And Judy started this due to the fact that her mother had dementia and kept getting kicked out of places due to behaviors. And so she's really made it her life's mission to take people in and try to remove the medications, figure out what the triggers are so that they don't need to be medicated to be calm and to be peaceful. And she's just done a fabulous job with that. And due to her mom's situation, it changed her life. But the Pohlads here, who own the twins, their mother also had the disease, and they've teamed up together, and the Pohlads have now come in and partnered with Judy on the Lakeview Ranch project. And it's just it's a beautiful story of how two moms who are both passed are still having this huge impact on life through their disease. Then there is, I have to say, kudos to Ellen Belk with Keep in Mind. There's a story on her and her small business that's tackling the NFL's cognitive concerns through her coaching. And so she is working with a group, alumni group, I believe it is, and I just think it's fantastic that she's doing that. So again, interesting read there. There was also the caregiver teleconnection with WellMed last night, and I don't know if anybody was on that call or not, but WellMed and the caregiver teleconnection does routine kind of teleseminars with with various experts, which I was one last night. But I would encourage people to check that out. It's just another great resource. I've also posted on the blog another fabulous song by Bacchus Saba and some partners, and the new song is about early onset dementia, which again is beautifully done and getting lots of great attention, which it should be doing. And I believe he's planning on doing another video mix with that one like he did for his last song. There's also an article from our intern Michelle on aging and stereotyping, which Michelle always gets lots of comments on her article. So I would encourage you to read that. And then our friend Jonathan Brooke, who was on the show previously, and she is the one who has the play My Mother Has Four Noses. She is actually out in New York on Broadway with her show at the Duke Theater, and I am just so proud of her and so excited for her. She started on the 14th, and she goes through May 4th. And it's a fabulous play. It's part musical. It's just exquisite storytelling. It's a one-woman show, but and I've seen it 3 times, and I'll go again any chance I get, because the talk afterwards, the interaction from the audience is just life-changing. People I know are still talking about seeing the play, and some of them, saw it several months ago. And so again, if you're out in New York, check out the Duke Theater for My Mother Has Four Noses, because I don't think you will be disappointed on that at all. And then for some of you, you may have missed it, but there was a large telesummit that was done by Ina Gilmore, and it ran all week last week, and it had 3 experts a day on this telesummit, and that is something that you might want to check out too, and you can refer to the links off of the blog. Last I want to say is that I'm going to be out in Phoenix, in Arizona, and if you're out in the area, come and check on us. I'm going to be speaking at an event that the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation and the Affordable Home Care is putting on the 27th, and that'll be from 4 to 5:30. And I'm very excited. There's several people who have contacted me through the internet that I'm going to actually get to meet personally. And then and that'll be in Scottsdale. And then on the 28th, I will be at the Alzheimer's Association Caregiver Conference, and I'll be the closing keynote speaker at 4:30. So, I'd love to be able to get together with you there. And again, I thank everybody for participating in the show. It doesn't look like we've got anybody who has any hot questions that they want to ask. So again, I'm just going to highlight some of those organizations. A lot of times people miss them on the first round. So again, the Purple Angel Project, you can find out, again, more information about how you can raise awareness if you're an individual, a company, an organization, or a community by going to our Purple Angel page, and that tab is under the About page. I would love to talk to you about that. If you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, check out Alzheimer's Disease International. And don't forget about the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. Lots of great tools on how to live with the disease on a daily basis. The Lewy Body Dementia Association and the Association of Frontal Temporal Degeneration and the National Aphasia Association are also there to support you for specific needs, because there's so many different types of dementia. the Alzheimer's Studies Group or the Alzheimer's Team. You can find them as the Alzheimer's Team on Facebook if you're looking for a clinical trial. And then don't forget about Jiminy Wicket, Music First with Choral Health, and that's CORO Health, and Puzzle With Me are great ways for people to interact with one another. Last, I want to give a shout out to my web designers, Custom A Design. They have just been brilliant to work with, and I so appreciate them very much. I guess I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today, and we will talk to you next week then. If you have any questions for me or any comments in the meantime, again, you can always go to www.alzheimerspeaks.com, and in the header, just click on the Contact Us button, and you can shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd love to chat with you. Maybe you might be our next guest. Have a wonderful week. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.